Hello, everybody. My name is Anovella, and today I have a special ghost.
You have to leave it in now. You have to leave it in.
So I have a ghost for Doomstopper Doom, and it is Caravan from Caravan Reads.
Hello.
Hello.
I
and
am Miss Ghost.
yes, she is my co-host together with Steve Donoghue for Doomstopper Doom, and we have read a book together. Well, we try to.
Yes, I tried to, and the book ahead of me.
Yeah, she has a private life. She does things besides reading, and for the moment I haven't. So that's why we weren't exactly at the same pace. But we did read the same book, though. And we were reading, show it to the people, Thorn Birds by Colleen McCullough.
Yes. Classic.
Can you say what the book was about?
So I'll first start by saying that the reason I bought this book is because it's an Australian classic. But the only thing I knew about it is that a priest has a sexual relationship with an underage girl. Not when she's underage, when she's older, but that's literally all I knew about it. I had watched it was turned into a mini series, and I had sort of watched the mini series, but like most things I watched when I was a teenager, I fell asleep during a lot of them. So I kind of didn't really know what happened. I was like, sure, I'll read it. That part squeaks me out, but cool. So then when you actually like know what it's about, it's basically a intergenerational or multi-generational family saga of a family who moves from New Zealand to Australia onto this, what is it, a sheep farm, right? Yeah, a sheep farm. And it's sort of like the different generations and all the different things they get up to. And it is quite the romp, I will say. Like, it is, wow, it's a story for sure.
It was a huge success in the 80s. Colleen McCullough was a very popular author back then. She's still alive, actually. She died. She did?
Yeah, just a few years ago. I actually read her bio just to like, because I was thinking to myself, like, who wrote this book? And I was like, let's see. And it was fascinating. Like, she was a neuroscientist for like 20 years. And then she's like, oh, I'm done with that. And then she moved, she wrote this book while she was at Yale being a neuroscientist, like in her spare time. Okay, cool. We all do that, right? Like, you know, just write like 800-page novels while working. And then after that, like her success, she was just like, okay, I'm gonna like move to this tiny island off the Australian coast and just lived out her life there. But yeah, I was like, whoa.
She's also very known for her Roman novels. They are set in during the time of Claudius and Caesar and Cleopatra and all those. And apparently I have two of them, and apparently they are very good, and I really want to read them too.
Okay.
So, but back to the Thorn Birds. Did you enjoy the story, actually?
This is, I think, is the hardest question I'm gonna have to answer, because I did enjoy it. Like, I never felt once like, oh, this is boring, or oh, well, maybe not that. There was a brief bit where we were talking about the Catholic Church a lot, and I was just like, okay, we get it. You're committed to the Catholic Church, whatever. But other than that, it was like a very well told story in the sense that the pacing was right. The characters were, I would say, just deep enough to care, because sometimes I don't really want to get into like a super deep analysis of like 10 different characters in a book. Like, it's just like, I don't care that much. So it was like enough depth of character without being too much. And the pacing was good. And I mean, just the things that happened were interesting. Like, actually, I wouldn't say it's very actiony, but the balance was there for me in like a lot of those aspects. So I have to say yes.
Yeah. I found it very engaging, although I don't always agree with the choices they made.
Oh, yeah.
But that makes the book all the more interesting. It is strange. I have read the book when I was like 13, 14, something like that. And I was then in love with the story between Ralph and Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
As
when
an
I
adult.
read it, I have a different viewpoint because, yeah, it's a bit strange, although he has never crossed the line. But you feel that there's an unhealthy attraction between, well, especially from Ralph to Maggie, but he never did cross the line at that when she was underage.
Yeah, and that's where I think that's why a lot of people are just like, oh, it's like not problematic, like you can't say anything, because you're right, he literally never did anything, never said anything, never hinted at anything. But and I wish I had like underlined the passage, like in his head when she's like 17, I think, he's definitely like, she's hot, like, and he's like, I am sexually attracted to her. And
16, she was 16.
Yeah, so like, I mean, of course at that stage, I mean, because what this book starts in 1915 and she's like 6 years old then.
Yeah, 6.
So that means when she's 16, so in 1925, it's not like the worst thing in the world for an adult man to think a 16-year-old is attractive and like lust after her, not do anything about it. I think a lot of people at that time would be like, oh, that's saintly behavior. But from our modern
he was a priest.
Exactly, and he knew it. So he is like, okay, I have to behave well. But yeah, from our modern perspective, it definitely was like, oh, he groomed her and he like didn't like discourage her attention. Like he kind of knew she was, I wouldn't say into him, but definitely like was too attached for him because he was just their town priest. It's not like he had a very, I mean, he had a relationship with her, is it her grandmother or no, her great aunt? But other than that, there's no other reason for them to have this close relationship. So I don't know, as the adult, he did have a lot of decision making in terms of like, you don't have to go off alone with her and have these private conversations. You don't have to, you know, do all these things. He did those things because he wanted to. And that's really why they ended up together later in life, because if they hadn't built that foundation, there wouldn't be any reason for them to have gotten together later in life. So, you know, wishy-washy.
And then when she got older, when she was 18, she was the one who made the first move. Not that much happened, but still she did.
Yeah.
And then afterwards she tried to find husbands that looked like him. Was he like him?
Oh my God. I wish I could like, maybe like we should put like the screenshots of the texts I sent you. Cause at this point, Anne was ahead of me and she had, I think, already read the book. Right. And I was getting to the part where Maggie was married to this guy, Luke. And I was just like, oh my God, this man is horrific.
Yeah. He's such a charmer.
Like, the most ridiculous. I mean, granted, again, at this time period, I think that wasn't like horrible husband behavior, like in the large scope of things, like not great for sure, but you know, he wasn't like overtly abusive to the point where like, you know, he just wasn't a considerate partner in like the most epic ways you could possibly imagine. Like, I don't know, how much should we talk about that? Because
the reason why we won't say, but let's say he wasn't really married to her.
Yeah.
In his mind, it was just more for practical reasons, being money.
Yeah.
In a way.
And not in the sense that he was cheating or like doing anything bad. It's just like, it's like, oh yeah, you're my wife, you're there. Like, I'm not gonna talk to you about any decision making, about my feelings, about our future together. Like,
nope.
We're just gonna sort of,
I'm gonna dump you there and you're gonna wait for me.
yeah, because he went off to work and just like left her alone for literally years, and you're like, okay,
with strangers, without money and without an income.
And she was forced to work to like support herself, because he was like, no, we can't spend any money on living accommodations for you, that's crazy, I'm gonna go off and work and you have to just figure it out yourself. And the sad part is that she actually like not only agreed to it, but that was her, not the living alone part, but the whole like money thing is like she agreed that he would just be in charge of all the money, and that she would not like own
Those were the
any money.
days.
But
Yeah, but in those days, a woman, like pre-Second World War, and even later, even in the 50s, a woman had no right to a bank account.
No, but they talked about this in the book. I guess Australia was like ahead of the times, because she said that, or he said, I know that women don't have to give their money to their husband, but just marrying me, that's the way it's gonna be. And she was kind of like, oh, wait. I mean, I know I don't have to, but I assume that's how it would be, because that's what marriage is. Like, she had this whole like idea of like, of course she would give him all her money, and she wouldn't have control over any money, but like legally that didn't have to happen. And but she, like, so that's my point, is she like not only agreed to it, like he didn't say like, oh, we're doing this, and she was like, let me think about it. Okay. He said, oh, we're doing this.
No, she went
like,
full in.
Yeah, she was like, of course. Why are you even telling me? I assumed that I would have no control over my own money. And so she was 18, of course, and very naive. And again, I was just saying in book club the other day, these books with characters that have no guidance from their mothers, like your mother needs to sit you down and tell you what it's gonna be like.
The mother was very distant, in the sense that the daughter was only there to help her to
be a second mom,
have more boys, which is true. And they had quite a few kids.
So many, wasn't it like 7 or 7 boys, maybe Maggie on the side, but
Maggie was the caretaker for the younger kids.
And
which was often the case for women and girls in those days.
Right, exactly. Like, obviously, like we're complaining about it today, but this was super normal. Like,
And did you feel the sense of Australia, the outback where they lived?
So that I don't know, like, not as much as I thought, because I've never been really to the true outback. Like, I've lived in Australia, but like obviously in a city, and I've like sort of driven through it a little bit, but obviously living like on a farm, like that, I've never done that. And I really thought there would be more descriptive scenes, considering how big the book is. But I definitely got that sense of isolation.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nobody around.
Nobody,
And I mean, that's kind of, aside from like the physical aspect, like that's the social aspect of living in the outback. Like, there just really is nobody.
Wasn't it a 4-hour drive or something that they were
like,
separated?
So it was definitely like,
she isn't very great at creating
like setting the scene.
She's more focused on the people than on the settings and
got the drama down pat, and then she just dived right into the personal drama. And we're on the farm, or like, like,
although there are a lot of things happening that are related to the environment. That's with the father, you remember? We can't spoil everything.
That is actually kind of like well, it's not a huge turning point, but it is like, when you read it, you're like, wow. So we won't spoil that. But like, they definitely do talk about the environment, like the rabbit thing. They mentioned, but that was like a huge deal in Australia. Like, good God, these rabbits are
everywhere,
everything. And so they she briefly mentioned that. So in terms of like historical accuracy, like the thing with the father, I think, was also very historically accurate and like a common thing that happened. So all that was like woven in, like, I think pretty seamlessly, because it doesn't take you out of the story at all, obviously. But in terms of like, and maybe that's a good thing, the waxing poetic about like, the golden grass like swaying in the breeze, like maybe that's not necessary. I don't know, because she did spend some time in the outback, and I know that's like kind of what inspired this part of the book, is that she did live on a sheep farm, I think, in New South Wales at some point in her life. So maybe she was just like, we were on the farm, and like
Yeah, but nothing
described,
happens.
not beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's a big difference. At the same time, I read East of Eden by Steinbeck. And that's the big difference between the two. He was very good at the describing the natural scenes and the drought and then the rain and everything. His women were less developed. and that's interesting to see both viewpoints. So he was more setting based, and she is more focused on the people and less the land. And that was interesting to see the difference between the two.
Yeah, because I right before we started our conversation, I was looking up, I read something about Dragida being named after something, and I'm sure it's actually in the book, and I just it went over my head in the first like 50 pages. But I was thinking about because I felt like it wasn't, how like some books say like, oh, the land or the country is a character, and I really felt like Dragida is the name of the sheep farm, was a character, because they talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Back to Dragida. I love Dragida. Like, I want to get away from Dragida. Like, it was just kind of like always floating around there. And and I think that's kind of where she focused on, like, in terms of the setting, because the setting was definitely like, it was kind of like, we're not in Dragida or we are in Dragida. It didn't really matter. Like, everywhere else was kind of like, oh yeah, like, they go to Rome, they go to London, like whatever. But like, it's all about Dragida. And I mean, from the ending of the book, that is, the whole story is really about Dragida as a whole. And that was her focus. So I actually, I just thought she characterized the farm without really ever describing it, which I thought was kind of impressive from a literary perspective, because you felt like it was a character, even though you didn't know, like, I didn't even really have a sense of like what the house really looked like, other than it was big and fancy. But like the rest of the buildings, like the way it was laid out, like, okay, there were a lot of sheep with a lot of acres, but other than that, you're like kind of clueless. And she still managed to make you feel like it was a character. So I thought that was kind of impressive.
Yeah, that's true.
From a writing perspective.
So she's she's married, hubby, everything. And then Ralph, we could say that too, is ambitious. Father Ralph, he inherits money, and if you have money, lots of money, it was like $15 million or $14 million.
Yeah, like it was like an obscene amount of money, I think.
Yeah, in those days. So he became a cardinal. A bishop first, a bishop, and then a cardinal.
Yeah, but like very quickly ascended to the
higher echelons. Yeah. And that's a part that you didn't like, because he was then in Rome. But you have to know that in those days, so we're talking about the 40s, because they end of 30s,
Germany.
So the problem was, and I think that she stayed a bit too long on that, but she wasn't explicit enough. But the Pope at that time had a really bad reputation, because he didn't do anything for the Jews. And he didn't do anything for the Jews because, in a way, he was favoring the Nazis, because they were defending Catholicism.
Right. Yeah, because they did mention like, oh, we don't want the Nazis to turn on us and like oust us out of power, like if they invade it. Well, not invade Italy, because Italy was aligned with the Nazis. But like, very easily, the Vatican is surrounded by Nazi allies. So like if they wanted to get rid of them, they could. So that was implied, but I didn't realize that it was because the Pope like specifically was like, no, we're not doing this, which now that you say it obviously makes sense, because I feel like, what could the Catholic Church really do without the Pope okaying it? But
that's why she lingered on that, but also to establish, of course, the stories of Maggie then further, that nothing much happened in her life.
Right. Like there's that part is more about like digging into Father Ralph and who he is, and kind of what he's doing. and like you're like, okay, you gave up this great love with Maggie, like what are you doing instead? And he's just a powerful guy, that's all basically.
But he also was at risk in a way, because somebody knew quite a few things or figured it out in
the church.
Yeah.
Who? I thought nobody knew. Wait. Who am I forgetting? Because his like best friend, I don't remember his name.
He knows about the rose.
Oh, he had figured it out, but just didn't say anything.
Yeah, but he mentions the rose often, referring to Maggie.
Oh, like he talks about her.
Yeah, no, the friend talks about her as the rose.
Oh, is that what
Yeah, in Ralph's Bible, there's a dried up rose, and that's Maggie.
Oh, and he just like gets it right away. Okay, yeah. I thought you were talking about knowing about the other person in Rome, I'll say. But yeah, just that he did have like a love relationship with a woman, like in general, like whether or not he acted on it or not, but kind of knew that he was hung up on someone. So yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. And like, oh, is temptation gonna come for him? We'll see.
Let's stop this and we go over to your channel so we can talk a little bit further. So please follow us to Catavan Reads. I will drop a link in the show notes.
Cool.
Talk to you later. Bye.